Good Tuesday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast with Jesse Simonton, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us. We're going to talk about the Tennessee basketball team, their big win over the weekend, now ranked in the AP poll. Talk a little recruiting and certainly talk about Tennessee and Missouri. The Vols coming off an open date. Tennessee, according to Jeremy Pruitt, the healthiest that they have been in a while. Missouri, on the other hand, just struggling. Jesse, I know Jeremy Pruitt made it sound like Missouri was really good.
Pulled off the Lou Holtz.
He pulled a little Lou Holtz on it, but it's hard to put the lipstick on that, so to speak, because they're just having a hard time offensively. Their offensive numbers are something that you don't see a lot of in Power 5 college football, particularly in the SEC.
13 points in the last 3 games. And that doesn't obviously include they got shut out in one of those games against Georgia. And then before that, their biggest explosion was 2 touchdowns, against Vanderbilt, to a Vanderbilt team that's an abomination this season. So they're really struggling. Kelly Bryant been injured. He's back. They can only get 6 points against Florida this past weekend watching that game. I mean, Jeremy also kind of talked about that what Missouri's doing with Kelly is a little bit different than what Clemson did. He didn't really go into detail, but when you watch Missouri, they clearly are running him a lot. And that's been an issue with his hamstring. But I mean, they have some weapons. I mean, they don't have their receivers have 0 touchdowns this year, which is kind of a crazy stat.
In
SEC play, their wide receivers have not caught a single touchdown. They do have their tight end's an NFL tight end. We know that Little Roundtree has given Tennessee problems in the past, which was another area that Pruitt brought up, the fact that this Tennessee historically has struggled against the Tigers. But I was surprised. I tweeted it out. I was surprised that when the line came out that Tennessee was almost a touchdown, in some places a touchdown underdog. And that line's already been hammered down, to 5, and even lower than that in some places. And that seems about right. Because Missouri does, despite their many issues on offense, Rob, they do have a good defense, top 10 in the country. In terms of just total defense, 14th overall in yards per play. I mean, Tennessee's going to have to find some ways to generate chunk plays because Missouri's not going to let you just march it down the field.
Yeah, and if you just look at the conference numbers and don't even take into account, what they did against, non-league opponents, they're pretty good. They're 4th in the SEC in rush defense, and they've played some, they played Georgia, they played Florida, they've played some good teams that way. They're stingy and. I think Tennessee would be challenged to move the football on them. But, man, I mean, I guess I expect a very low-scoring game because both offenses are anemic.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee's – the question is what's Tennessee going to find offensively? They're the healthiest they have been, Austin, according to Jeremy Pruitt. What does that mean for them offensively, particularly in the line of scrimmage? Does that mean they're going to be back to running the football with some effectiveness? Because you go back – they ran the football well against Mississippi State, I think 190 yards in that game, but their numbers have gone the opposite way.
As they've gotten beat up.
Yeah, they have.
During that recent run before the bye week. I do think that Tennessee will try to run the football more. I'll be interested to see who they start at quarterback, but at the end of the day, no matter who you start, much like 2 weeks ago, if the offensive line isn't healthy, or you're ineffective trying to run the football, and those kind of work hand in hand, then it's going to make things a lot harder to navigate offensively against what is a solid defense in Missouri. So I do think if Darnell Wright is healthy, and I do believe that he is, I believe that he will be 100% ready to go coming up on Saturday night. And if that's the case, then I think Tennessee's chances to run the football across the board will be far greater. And I think Jameer Johnson is a touch healthier than he was at Kentucky.
I think what concerns me about that is that Calvert was maybe Tennessee's best offensive lineman against Kentucky, and they didn't get anything done. I mean, I don't think that just Darnell being out is why they struggled so much to run the football.
I don't disagree with that. I think the other thing, too, that's interesting, I do think having Darnell back helps them, and I think having all those guys across the front healthier helps them. But I wonder a little bit, Jesse, where's Jim Chaney's confidence in even calling running plays? They didn't run it effectively against Kentucky, but they also didn't try to run it extensively against Kentucky either. I mean, it's almost like he's calling fewer runs the last couple of weeks, but not against UAB. I mean, he tried to be pretty hard-headed there, but against Kentucky, they didn't even much try to run it against a team that's given up, 175 yards a game on the ground.
Yeah, and when you look at Missouri, I mean, they got run all over by Kentucky and then Mississippi, but both of those were Bowden playing running quarterback, and then Plumlee running around.
Newsflash, Plumlee's pretty good running around with the ball in his hand.
But he's really good. As LSU can attest.
As LSU and Alabama both.
400 yards of offense this past week. But Florida only had 50-something yards rushing on Saturday. I mean, they could not do it, so they found success, which would not surprise Tennessee fans, and we know Jim Chaney likes to throw the ball around. I think Tennessee, if they're going, the probably early game plan is probably to, go more spread, wide formations, and kind of try to attack a Missouri secondary that had been pretty good, but this past weekend they gave up more than 250 yards for the first time all season. Trask threw for 330 against them, and that's how Florida did all their damage.
Yeah, I thought Florida did a nice job with taking the running back and motioning him, and they got P. Ryan matched up against a linebacker out wide a couple of times, created some. They did some. I mean, Dan Mullen's been known to do good things schematically. I thought they schemed Missouri a couple of times for some big plays, for some explosive plays, which was a big part of that game. It's going to be what is Jim Chaney's offense? What's his plan look like? And who's his quarterback? If you're making a decision on the quarterback, Jeremy Pruitt's saying, I'm going to practice all three, going to narrow it down to two. What are you going to do there?
This is my theory, or actually this is my hope, that,
Your thought?
Derek Dooley has already lost to the two Kentucky teams that started receivers at quarterback. Why not start Juwan and make it 3 total that Derek Dooley teams have lost to starting quarterbacks? I said this a week ago. I mean it. If you're wanting to continue the whole mojo thing of him coming off the bench, you roll out there Juwan and the Wildcat the first play, and then you go to JG. I think he's earned the right. For every reason that he lost it, he's earned it back. And so, in my opinion, he's the guy you should roll with on Saturday. Jesse asked Jeremy the question on Monday about him having a smaller apparatus on his hand. I would venture to say that it will be smaller. I don't know that to be a fact, but I do know that he said that a couple weeks ago when I asked him about it, the plan was for it to get smaller as he got healthier. Well, we're now how many days past removed of the Kentucky game, and he's not really done anything in over a week. One would think that he would be, starting to see some of the girth of that thing on his hand come off.
Yeah, he's going to be, by the time you get to Saturday, he's going to be 4 weeks removed from the injury is where he's going to be. Do you start Jared?
I know I get what AP's saying about the mojo thing. You don't want to break it, but he plays the vast majority of the snaps.
Oh, if it's me,
I mean it's his game.
I would just start. I'm just saying if you're wanting to continue that whole deal.
Right. So you're saying he's the quarterback of record, whether he gets the first series or he comes in on the third series or the second series. You believe he'll be the quarterback.
He's the guy I'm building my game plan around this week.
I do not believe they're going to do that as we sit here on Tuesday morning. I believe he's going to play the lion's share of reps. I still think they're going to start Brian Maurer.
I kind of lean with you. I
just think Jeremy has, and he has been very guarded with his comments about this, about the quarterbacks throughout the season. But I think something that he said maybe a week or two ago that has probably been the most illuminating of any of them was that he doesn't think the other guys, meaning Shroud and Maurer, and we believe Maurer has the leg up on Shroud, that they would be as comfortable going into the game as the number 2 guy versus Jarrett. Now, if Jarrett struggles, do you go back to Maurer? I don't know, but I think Maurer's going to get a series or 2, and then Jarrett's going to play a lot, and then maybe Maurer goes back in for 1, and then Jarrett finishes the game. I just think that's. I don't know if it's they can call it mojo or whatever. If I was the coach, I would just let Jarrett Garantano play the whole game. But right now, as we sit here on Tuesday, I think Maurer's going to start and JG plays the most snaps.
Yeah. At this point, you're not surprising Missouri by whoever you announce as the starter if you announce somebody now. So, if it's Jared, why not just say it's going to be Jared? Because they know who he is. They played against him. Barry Odom schemed against him for a couple of years now. So I don't know if there's a big surprise there. I do wonder, though, with the freshmen, and I don't think this is what Jeremy was implying when he said that they would not be as equipped to come in off the bench. I do wonder if you feel more comfortable playing a freshman early if you're Jim Chaney because you're scripting your first 15.
It's a good point.
So Thursday at practice, you're going to run through, hey, here's the first 10, 12, 15 calls we're going to make in the game. So you know everything that's coming.
Which is part of the reason they got mad at Maurer.
Because he didn't follow the script.
Because he didn't follow the script and wasn't throwing it to the right side of the field at Kentucky.
Right, but we know that Jim likes to script that out. Now, it's not exact, but he scripts out his first and tens, first, second long, second and shorts, all that. So the players are going to know, the quarterback knows what he's going to get called there. And I wonder if there's a bit of a comfort level playing a freshman that way to get his feet wet, get him into the game, as opposed to him coming off the bench cold 3 series in when everybody's making adjustments.
Yeah, I think that's an astute point.
All right, so let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball. I thought it was interesting in your piece that you had over the weekend, Jesse. I knew Nigel Warrior had played well and had played better. And some of the PFF numbers sometimes can get a little bit, I think, a little bit skewed in some unusual ways. But still, the notion, the stats you had on him and what Nigel's been able to do for Tennessee is really pretty incredible for a guy who, and I know Coach Pruitt said that he's improved as much as anybody over the 18 months. Rob, I think he's improved as much as anybody we've seen over 5 or 6 weeks. I mean, you go back to BYU, Georgia State, even the Florida game. He was non-existent.
He made it. I mean, went through wasn't there a play in each game where, and I don't want to throw a kid under the bus. We're just Nigel taking a bad angle cost you, maybe the BYU game and a touchdown against Georgia State, and now. I mean, it's remarkable. He came into the year with 1 interception. He suddenly he turned into a ball hawking safety. He plays the run. He plays the pass. I mean, I'm could not be more impressed with the way he's raised his level of play.
To your point, Hubs. I mean, I did that with this second bye week piece. I also had the second number, after each grade, kind of saying, all right, this is where they were plus minus compared to after the first bye week. Nigel had the biggest jump of anyone on the team, to your point about how much he's been, not through just this season, but through 4 weeks to now. His grade jumped 20 points. Now, after the first 4 games, he was considered a below-average player, and now he's considered almost elite and ranks as, through 10 weeks, the number 1 safety in the SEC. I mean, it's a pretty remarkable turnaround.
So why? Why does it happen?
I mean, he said that, it's about falling in love with the game again and all that. I think this sometimes, and, Jeremy downplayed this, but I mean, I've heard him talk about it specifically before. Just sometimes, a kid takes 3 or 4 years to really for things to click and understand and just the maturity level. I think that a lot of it, there is a maturity level. Jesse, I mean, we watched him this summer. I mean, just how he interacted with high school prospects that were on campus at camps, and how he kind of played that big brother mentor role and talked to them about where he's been and where he's at now and that kind of thing. I think all that plays into how you approach your own game. If you're mature off the field, I think it helps you be more mature on the field. That's the only thing I can think of.
Well, I think he's clearly connected with Ansley. I think that addition has helped. There's no secret with that. I think, and this isn't just particular to Nigel, because we've even talked about it with Jarrett, but in my opinion, there's plenty of guys that it's easy to kind of have confidence when some things go well, but it can be kind of almost faux confidence where you don't really have that bounce back ability that when you make a mistake. I think Nigel's legitimately playing with real confidence now. He knows where he's going to be. He's going to play fast, and he's going to put himself in the right position. And if he screws up, he's going to jump right back up and say, all right, I'm going to get back in the huddle. I'm going to make a play next time. And that wasn't there the first 3 years of the season. I think he kind of puffed his chest out like, hey, I'm Nigel Warrior at times. But internally, we know that there was some confidence issues, whether it was, he wanted to play more as a freshman, sophomore, but he and Stoops didn't get along, or Shoop didn't get along a lot. Last year, he made some big busts. I just think this year he's playing with a lot of confidence. But credit goes to Ansley, too, because his fundamentals have improved. This is a guy who had stone hands for 3 years, was not a guy that, we've talked about it with Pruitt. This is not a guy that made a lot of plays in high school as like a quote-unquote ball hawk. And now he has more PBUs and interceptions this season than he had his first 3 years combined. So pretty impressive for a senior, and you use it all the time. I mean, this is contract year too. So they see the kind of writing on the wall. You want this career to continue, or do you want this to be your last stop? And he has certainly put himself in position to not only get drafted, but be a guy who could potentially, actually make an impact in the NFL, which I'm not sure we could say a year ago at all.
No, I don't think you. I mean, I wouldn't have said that 3 weeks into this season.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 weeks into the season, everybody's talking about, are you going to take him off the field? When are they going to make a change? When are you going to go with McCullough? When's the youth movement coming? And now here's a guy who is Rob, just playing instincts that we haven't seen throughout his entire career. It's like he's seeing the field for the first time.
He's turning into the guy that every Vol fan hoped that he would be, 5 years ago when he was one of the crown jewels of the recruiting class.
Yeah, he has. It's been pretty impressive to watch. Jesse, what else jumped out at you in the piece that you did this weekend and looking at it?
We've talked about this a little bit. That Schamberger has quietly been really good for the Vols. There's all sorts of metrics that PFF has, and you can kind of calibrate it depending on the number of snaps, because obviously if a kid only plays 10 snaps, the stuff can get really skewed. But for players in the SEC that have played at least, I think it's like 35% of their snaps in the slot, Schamberger ranks number one in terms of least, you would say least amount of receptions per snap, or it takes the most snaps per reception. That's just big. When we talked about it before the season, that was a huge, Balin Buchanan's name got brought up again this week on Monday, asking about his health. And I know Pruitt kind of lamented the fact that they weren't going to have him to start the season. To me, that's been a big upgrade on why this defense has been a lot better. I know that Balin's trustworthy. He's a vet. But the star spot, I wrote about it during the offseason. The star spot, the nickel spot was such a sort. Tennessee was getting torched on the middle of the field all last year. Still some issues with the inside linebacker stuff. Part of that's Toto being a freshman. Batuli, that's just not his strength. But Schamberger's ability to kind of hold his own has, I think, really transformed the defense, because in this Saban, Kirby, Pruitt scheme, that spot is so important. Whether it's blitzing off the edge or being able to really lock down now, what a lot of guys put one of their best 2 or 3 guys in the slot. Tennessee does it every week. That's where Juwan's playing 70% of his snaps inside.
Which goes back to the whole maturity thing. Schamberger's a guy that struggled with
lived in a doghouse a year ago,
and all of a sudden now is just clean and playing really good, solid football. And sometimes it's just as you get older and you understand, it's fleeting. Even if you're going to play 10 years in the league, it's fleeting.
Well, and I think the other thing too is and Rob, we've talked about this. You go everywhere the system's been put in place, year 2's better. Kirby had the advantage because the system was already in from a concept standpoint. He tweaked his own elements to it, but the overall concept of this defense was already instilled when he got there, which made the transition at Georgia, I think, somewhat easier. But when you look at everywhere else that's being put in, when it's put in, it's year 2 when it really starts to take off, because I think it takes that long to master it.
Well, I think with any system, you're going to be better. Markedly better.
Right.
In year 2, especially when you're talking about kids. I think AP. To AP's point about maturity. I don't think fans a lot of times appreciate that you're dealing with 18, 19-year-old kids. I've got a 17-year-old. I'm sure he didn't make his bed this morning. Just
I'm 36. I didn't make my bed.
But I'm saying he was told to. He'll say I forgot. Blah blah. Did
you make your bed this morning?
I didn't have to. My wife.
But no, to your point, you're right. You're still having to remind kids to.
And it's not a job. They're going. They're going to class. They've got. Social stuff going on. It's the kind of focus and work you have to put in to be really good and master this stuff is not something that comes naturally to most 19-year-old college students.
Well, and you're exact. And to throw that too, I don't think Schamberger, for example, Jesse, I don't think he took hard coaching very well last year. I don't think that's something he was mature enough to handle. So when somebody was riding him hard, I think his answer was a shutdown deal, and not necessarily. He took how the message was delivered, not necessarily the message itself. I think the maturity factor is he and Nigel and some of these guys are accepting the message, not how it's delivered, and you're seeing some improvement with those guys.
And this goes to how Rick Barnes does business. And what I think you'll see from this staff is I think you'll see them weed those guys out in the recruiting process in the future. they'll know before guys get on campus if they can take hard coaching, the kind of guys that they want. And I think you'll see that part get better and better.
Well, and I think those recruits coming in will have a better understanding of what they're getting into because it'll be talked about on the visit. Whereas this is what Schamberger, he inherited. I mean, this guy, I'm here and this is the guy I get. This is not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
Even though Alabama recruited him, he may not have gone there because he didn't want that style of coaching, so to speak, you know? And so I think that's a good point.
A couple other just quick things for folks that didn't read the piece, but I encourage you to, that I thought stood out. Just quick hitters. It doesn't surprise us, but when you just see the numbers, Jawan Jennings leads all SEC wide receivers, including the studs at LSU and Alabama, in terms of avoided tacklers. I mean, he's just impossible to get on the ground. And he ranks just as impressively, actually checks in ahead of a couple of those Alabama guys as the number 3 overall wideout in the SEC. Tennessee's inability to generate explosive plays on the ground, Ty Chandler's really been the only one. The fact that Garantano and Maurer have almost as many runs over 10 yards, they have 3 apiece, as Tim Jordan and Eric Gray, kind of speak to the lack of explosiveness from the tailback position. And then the other one, you know, J.G. Still has not been a great play-action passer, which has kind of been weird because that was such a strength for him a year ago. But part of his issues early in the season, whether it was red zone, whatever, those interceptions and tip passes, so many of those came between the numbers in the middle of the field. He was really struggling there. Had 4 turnovers in that respect, multiple batted passes. He has just one batted pass since the bye week, the first bye week. So we've had 5 the first 4 games, 1 since. And his completion percentage has jumped up almost 10 points on throws between the numbers, and that's really helped his success.
All right, last football quiz, good stuff. And if anybody hasn't read it, jump on the General's Quarters and read it. It's worth your time. It's an interesting look at this team, where they are by week 1 to by week 2. Last football question before we jump into basketball and recruiting. I'm going to give you 3 guys, and you tell me which one's the biggest surprise to you in terms of what they've done for this team and how they played. Kenneth George Jr., for an offensive guy, I'm going to say Austin Pope, and defensively Kevon Bennett. Which one of those 3 is the biggest surprise to you?
Kevon Bennett.
I was going to say, I would say Bennett too.
You think Bennett's the biggest surprise on this team in terms of a guy, not that he's been dominating, but a guy who's just kind of come out of nowhere, moved positions, different guy?
Well, he's been a great brother-in-law to have because, I mean, when DT's not, you know, necessarily been there on a play or two, Kevon Bennett's been the guy that stepped up and made the plays.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a guy we didn't even know if he was going to get on the field.
Yeah.
Along the way. I mean, same with Kenneth George Jr. too, by the way.
Yeah, I almost want to lean there because of the storyline entering the season. Now it changed a little bit because of Bryce's situation and subsequent suspension, but so many people were, you know, that Tennessee's penciled in. They got Alante and Thompson, and they're locked in, and yet Kenneth George has been just as good as both of them all season.
And as a guy who I think still hasn't grasped his full potential. He's a big corner.
He's just learning how to play football.
And he's learning how to play football. Didn't really play in high school. You know, took a chance to go junior college.
He's kind of a guy, you know, he's kind of a guy, though, that, and Pruitt and some of them, if you kind of talk to them, they would probably say that he's almost the perfect type of guy for what they want to do, in the sense that he didn't come in with any bad fundamentals. Right. He was just raw, silly putty, and they were able to say, hey, you're a fantastic athlete. We're going to teach you how to play football and teach you how to do it. He obviously got a year in the system last year, didn't play a lot, got his feet wet, but he's got long arms. I mean, some of these guys come in with bad habits that they got to break. He didn't have any of that because he had never played.
I mean, I'm with you there, but I'm also with Rob on Kevon Bennett because I never thought Kevon. I didn't know if Kevon Bennett was talented enough to play in the SEC.
I didn't think he would be here this year.
Yeah.
After last year.
I
just didn't think he fit.
Right.
I think they're really all 3 really good stories. Yeah. I mean, Austin Pope even. I mean, a guy that couldn't even lift his leg up a year ago at this time, has the back surgery last December.
He's playing a role that nobody likes, but he's just he's been really, really important for them, both in pass protection.
And he can come back, right?
And in the run game.
Yeah, so he could be a nice piece next year.
Yeah, certainly. 3 good stories on this team for all. And look, Jawan Jennings is a great story, but those are 3 names nobody's talked about because they haven't been out much in the media, and they play thankless roles in terms of Pope and some of that stuff. I think it's looking at the numbers. I think those 3 guys were in there where you just kind of like, oh, okay, that those guys have been pretty solid, better than even I guess I thought when you look at what they've been able to do the last 4 or 5 weeks. All right, let's go to hoops. Let's get to hoops right quick, Rob, and then we'll circle back to recruiting. this Tennessee basketball team, they don't have size. They've lost all this stuff. Lamonte Turner can't make a shot. Yet they go on the road. They travel halfway around the country to go to Canada to take on Washington and play their best basketball game. How surprised were you at what Tennessee got done on Saturday?
I mean, I guess maybe on one hand a little bit surprised at how easy it was, but I wasn't surprised that they showed up and played. I mean, not with the veteran guards, not with Rick's system, but the way they were so efficient in the first half. I tell you what it really highlighted to me was what a mature team can do to a team that's relying on, I don't care how talented they are, but superstar freshmen playing in their third college basketball game. Now,
which is a reminder to everybody for what's coming next year.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, those two kids are, they'll probably, top 10 draft picks probably, Stewart and McDaniels. And Tennessee just cut them up. What impressed me the most was how, this speaks to coaching, this speaks to the players, the maturity that they approach the game with. You could tell in that first half that they had an offensive game plan and they knew how to execute it. I mean, they just cut up Washington's 2-3 zone. Just sliced it to pieces. Got it into the middle at the foul line, either collapsed it or had Pons or Bowden just turn around and make uncontested 12-foot jumpers for 20 minutes. And Washington it got so bad that Mike Hopkins came out of the zone, played man-to-man for like the last 4 minutes of the half, which, I don't, and they weren't much better there. So I thought it was a great example of what senior guards can do for you. Now, Lamonte couldn't buy a shot, and he turned the ball over too much, but he still, he had 7 more assists. He led the team with 7 rebounds. That shows you how tough he is. And Jordan Bowden was spectacular in the first half, especially. 15 points, I think 3 of 5 from 3, and I'm stunned at Eve Pons. Stunned.
Well, how can you not be? A couple of things before we get to Pons. One, I don't know why you would ever zone a Rick Barnes offense, because everybody that's tried to zone him, I don't know that the zone has beaten Tennessee or given Tennessee problems since Barnes has been here. A team that's rooted in zone. And two, part of the reason why they carved the zone up, the ball never got stuck in anybody's hand. Their ball movement was really, really good all the way around the floor. And then back to Pons, there's no way Rick Barnes and his staff thought that was coming for 3 games. Now, look, I get it. He's improved, all this other stuff. But there's no way anybody saw this coming,
no,
did
I don't think. I think everybody was telling me he was going to be better. He's going to be better.
Yeah, but
I still thought he would be an offensive liability. But instead, he's shooting over 70% through 3 games. He scored 15, 19, and 15 points.
And he's not taking bad shots.
Not at all.
And he's playing well within the framework of the offense.
He's confident. He's smooth. And I think the move of him down into the low block to the power forward spot is really unlocked some potential in this team that I was not sure that they had.
All right, so let me ask you this. Much the same way we talked about Nigel, how does a guy like Eves, who clearly was not playing with any confidence, in the latter part of last year, how does he go from that guy to this guy?
First off, you got to give him credit. You talk to Rick or assistant coaches or anybody on the team, and they'll talk about just how much time Pons puts in the gym, just working. But also, you got to give credit to this coaching staff. How much have we seen it? Grant Williams comes in as a chubby 6'6", 255-pound freshman and leaves as, a first-round NBA draft pick and 2-time SEC Player of the Year. Same story for Admiral Schofield. Jordan Bone, didn't have any concept of how to play point guard when he was a freshman. Kyle Alexander, was the very definition of a big man project guy, and they turned those guys into the core of the team that won 31 games. So, you got to give Eves credit because having coaches that know how to develop kids is one thing, but you've got to have kids that will take that coaching and he's a phenomenal athlete. I was talking with somebody today. He may be the best athlete I've seen come through this program. Just raw athlete, running, jumping, strength that I've seen come through there in, I guess, almost 20 years now. So he's got some tools to work with. But, man, the kid has worked his tail off. And I think last year he just hit a rough patch and his confidence just plummeted.
Started shooting way too many threes.
And he was playing
away from the basket.
And not to mess up. He wasn't being. And Rick will say this all the time. This is one thing you can't be for me is tentative. And Eves was tentative. He was just afraid to screw up. He's afraid to let guys down. And the confidence is just at a whole different level.
Don't you think it helps the confidence and not being tentative when, this year, he knows he's got to play well. A year ago, though, he was tentative to let Grant down, Admiral down, Kyle down. Those guys aren't here, and I get you could say you're tentative to let Jordan or Lamonte down, but it's different. I mean, like I think he knows, Volquest knows. They don't play supportive roles anymore. They're the main guys down low.
They're ready for it. I mean, it's been a nice natural progression for those kids. I mean, they've had the chance to sit back for 2 or 3 years, and like last. I mean, Eves knew if he screwed up, Jordan Bowden was going to come in, and probably in Tennessee would probably be okay. And
if Eves screwed up bad enough, Jordan was coming in, and Eves might not get back off the bench. But he's going. I mean, he's going to be able to make a mistake and either stay on the floor or he's going to get back on the floor.
And he's ready for it.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you guys know. I mean, I'm not saying Tennessee's going to win the SEC championship, but I also from the start have been saying they're not as bad as they're not going to be as bad as people think they're going to be. And how they looked on Saturday is why. I mean, they know how to play the game. They're smart. They're very, very tough.
Well, especially
it helps that the SEC's not very.
Well, I was going to say
to this point
they play together.
Good.
They play together and kind of have this, even though they're in Josiah and some new guys. Whereas you see a team like Florida that has all this talent allegedly, and I mean they can't hit a shot anyways. But that they play with no pace, they play with no rhythm. I mean they have gotten off to very rough start.
It's like they have no feel for each other on the floor.
Chemistry matters more in basketball than any other sport. And offensive line, I think, is a close second.
It's a small sample size. You're 3 games in. But I think if they can continue what they're doing right now, it's phenomenal to me the growth of Josiah James, because the guy comes in, he's got all that expectation, he's a 5-star and all this and that, but he's playing a role where he doesn't shoot it that much on a nightly basis. Does other little things, assists, steals, rebounds.
Well, he was good on Saturday.
Yeah, correct. 9 points and
didn't miss a shot.
Yeah, 4-4 filtered in. My point though is when you've got 14 from Volquest, 15 from Pons, 16 from Lamonte, and 18 from Jordan, it allows a guy that was probably coming in with a little bit of pressure on him to just kind of ease in. It's like instead of jumping right into the deep end, you get in at the steps.
Well, and I think I don't think anybody thought he was going to come in and average 20 points. It's not his game, but his feel for his teammates and his feel for the game, it looks to me like Rob, the game's slowing down.
He was so much better on Saturday. He looked so much more confident. He had 5 assists. Again, didn't miss a shot, didn't take a bad shot, made his only 3-pointer. And I also think playing on the same floor with Stewart and McDaniels, 2 other big-time guys that he has played with at every big shoe camp and USA basketball event for the last 3 years.
Got him going a little?
Yeah, I think that got him going a little bit.
How worried, as we wrap up basketball, how concerned is Lamonte's shoulder in the shot right now?
I think it's going to be a little bit of a concern, but man, we kind of saw the same thing last year. I mean, eventually, he shot himself out of it. I think he's pressing a little bit with his shot. I mean, I think he's like that. But it's an issue. I mean, if Rick's talking about it, it's an issue. I mean, because he's not going to make excuses for kids that are empty. Like some coaches want to protect a player who's not playing well by mentioning some phantom injury. I mean, I think it's bothering him. I mean, he missed a lot of time in the summer because of it, and I think very clearly. I mean, he was 3 of 12 again on Saturday. He doesn't look like he's right to me, but he's running the show and playing well. And one other thing I wanted to mention real quick, I think Rick has got to develop. He's got to learn to trust his bench more. He's played 7 players in that game against Washington. There's gonna be some nights where you can't do. I mean, Devontae Gaines has got to give him something. Pember's got to be able to give him something. And so that to me is the one spot where you're a little concerned right now, is that they've got to find 1 or 2 more guys who can give them something.
We'll see if they find some of those guys this week as they continue their preseason action and continue to move forward. We'll see how much they grow and develop over the course of the next few weeks as well. All right, let's get to recruiting here. Off week, Tennessee was on the road at the end of the week, seeing a lot of guys. Austin, you got an away game this week, so you don't have visitors. What's the top 3 or 4 things of note in recruiting, other than Tennessee's offering 7th and 8th graders and 9th graders? I mean, a lot of offers are going out there. But in terms of 2021, what's to note? I guess the kid from Nevada that's committed to Nevada is probably the biggest thing brewing right now.
For next weekend, Tennessee's hoping to get a handful of guys in. I don't think Joel Williams is going to come in anymore. I think that ship is, sailed. I think it's sailed more on Tennessee's part. But you're right. I mean, I think Kehoe's or Kehoe, however you pronounce it, the kid out of Nevada. His brother played at Alabama. Was recruited by Niedermeyer and Pruitt down there. That they like him a lot. And
do you think he's moved up ahead of some other guys on the board?
I do.
Okay.
I do think that he's moved up ahead of other guys at that similar position. Lenneth Whitehead. And talking to some people and talking to Chad, who obviously has had the talks with Lenneth. I think Tennessee's going to have a real shot to get him in the end. Just because the kid again went to South Carolina. It was all defensive coaches that talked to him. The kid clearly wants to play running back, and at this point, I think Tennessee's willing to give him every shot to play running back. I mean, you highlighted it earlier in the podcast. Their inability to make big plays on the ground, and they need somebody that can lean forward and get the tough yards, but can also make a big enough play and be just a really solid contributor at that position. And we all know Jeremy likes bigger backs. So outside of that, Tennessee remains in a good spot for Omari Thomas. I think they're in a really good spot for Octavius Oxendine and Tyler Barron, who will not do anything until December 18th. I still love where Tennessee's at there.
What else going on?
Well, they are hosting a couple of those guys committed elsewhere next weekend too. Not just the Nevada kid. Does Tennessee continue to push some stuff on the outside linebackers spot? Guys that they hosted this summer. That they kind of, Morvin Joseph, Florida State commit. He's gonna visit a lot of places. He's a former UF commit, then flipped. He's gonna officially visit Florida too in December. He'll be here next weekend. Banks, the Mississippi State commit. He's from. He knows some of these Memphis kids because he's right on that border, Oak Ridge or where's it?
Olive Branch.
Olive Branch, excuse me. Yeah, right there, Olive Branch. So he'll be here this weekend or next weekend too. So just kind of a couple other guys that. And again, we're going to get down to the nitty gritty here about Tennessee's going to have prioritized spots and what need kind of trumps something else, especially when you're talking about. They like Whitehead and they want to run him back. What did they do at inside linebacker? AP listed the trio of defensive linemen they want. You add those up and you can get to 25 pretty quickly.
Well, and you're not going to turn a defensive lineman away.
No, and that's why as tight as the spots are, if Tennessee can land Oxendine, Tyler Barron, and then Jay Hardy wants back in, and they're going to continue to swing there. I do think that one's going to get tough to flip him back. But I do think Tennessee's going to, they're going to go down swinging. They're not going to. There's not going to be any rollover in that deal.
Every time Derek Brown makes a play for Auburn, though, it's probably a little bit harder because that guy's going to get paid for them. But they're going to swing. His relationship with Rodney Garner will be hard to overcome.
Yeah,
I think clearly there's no question and no disputing that with where that situation.
Well, and then it's what they do. They're obviously not going to turn down a Darnell Washington. Naturally, but there is there's going to be some gymnastics that happen here with everything, just because they want another playmaker in this class. But you have to wait for Darnell. What happens with a guy like Jimmy Holiday? You said it last week on the pod. Jones Bell is likely to stick with Alabama, but you're going to get him on campus again.
Yeah.
So.
I do think that the fact that you have D'Angelo Gibbs on this team, and he's had really giving the defense a fit, running the scout team all year, honestly gives you a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to you don't have to take another wide receiver. If you feel like Romel's going to continue to develop, you got Palmer back, you got Brandon Johnson coming off a red shirt, D'Angelo, Gerard Means, and then of course you got Hyatt and
you got Holiday there at this point in time.
Darian Williamson, you mean?
No,
wide receiver. I said
Callaway.
Callaway. Sorry,
that's why I was confused.
My bad.
And they're going to have to hold on to him, but yeah, right now.
That's another great find early.
Right, but your point is it may be Thieu, Jones, Bell, or nobody.
Yeah,
at
correct.
The receiver position.
Yeah, not just take one to take one.
Right, I got you. Numbers will be a challenge, as they are every year. They always work themselves out, as we say, but there will be a bit of a challenge, and some decisions will have to be made.
Who would have thought they would be a challenge of 6 weeks ago?
Well, you sit right here and at this table we're sitting at, and you pounded the table pretty good. Said Tennessee's got to win. They've got to win to hold the class. If they win, it'll get things back moving, and it has. And that's what's happened with Tennessee. Are they where they were in the summer in terms of some of the big name guys?
No.
But you know what? Noah Sewell was going to be hard to get back in the summer. They had some momentum in the summer, but getting him was going to be really, really hard.
But you know what? If Tennessee had won those first 2 games and they were sitting here with the potential to go 9-3, I do think they would be a lot more heavily involved.
Yeah, they probably got him back on campus.
Yeah.
It could have been a factor there, but it was still. I don't know that they would have gotten him, but it did change.
If and buts for candy and nuts.
Right,
I mean,
it changed the landscape. But because they've won, it's got them back on track to, as Jesse pointed out in the Mailbag podcast last week, to put themselves in a position to be a class that's 10 to 15th nationally.
And of course, Jeremy was at Marietta last Friday. Tennessee's not going to go down, they're going to go down swinging trying to get B.J. Ojolari back in this class. I mean, they're maybe a pipe dream, but I mean they're going to continue to swing there and see if they can connect.
Yeah, they're going to make everybody work to the finish line. That's what they'll do, because they're going to, with those guys they've been deeply invested in, they're going to continue the Hardys and the BJs and those guys. They're not just going to roll over and be done between now and December 18th on that signing day. So recruiting getting ready to get cranked back up. There'll be plenty of other things going on in the world of college football, but there's obviously a big one for Tennessee this weekend, a chance to get bowl eligible at Missouri. We'll talk more about the Tigers in our Friday podcast, talk more Tennessee basketball, talk some more recruiting with you as well. That's coming up in our Friday edition of the Volquest.com podcast. But that's going to do it for this podcast. For Jesse, Austin, and Rob, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody.